over to you, Cynthia.
Oh, good morning, good evening, good night. How are you, Rehan?
I'm great, thank you so much.
Fabulous. So I'll introduce myself briefly. I'm Cynthia Stott. I live in San Francisco, California, USA, and I am an international speaker coach and global visibility influencer with 47,000 followers in 140 plus countries. And I have been international since I was 11 years old, and everywhere I go, it seems an international following follows me. And I'm so happy to be here talking to Rehan Allahwala. And I think you're in Kuwait right now, and I'm in California, and we're speaking all at the same time because of technology. I'm on my phone, you're probably on a computer, and it connects us as if we're right in each other's living room. So, good morning. How are you?
Well, thank you so much. It's afternoon over here. It's 3:30. It's 3:30 afternoon.
3:30 in the afternoon. Okay, great. So, I wanted to talk to you about the Insan Party and why you started a political party rather than an NGO, but it sounds like you have started an NGO as well. But what advantage is a political party for you?
Thank you for that beautiful question and taking the time and asking these questions. Questions are what help us grow. Questions are what helps us evolve. And I'm sure you have read the book by Socrates where he has this story where people of the cave, allegory of the cave, right? And the way people 2,500 years ago he's teaching is to ask questions. And that's how we grow. We don't need to tell them anything because if you tell them something, they won't like it because they're living in a cave. They're living in their own bubble, right? So I am originally from Pakistan. I was also a man of a bubble. I grew up in a business family, and I started working very early. I started going with my dad to his work, his business at the age of 5, and I started, at on kind of like holidays, like Christmas. We would set up like a lemonade stand, how you guys do it in the back in the U.S. So I started selling candy that way, and then I started selling stationery in my school, because my dad wouldn't give us cash, but he would give us everything. But I wanted some cash. I wanted to buy my Coke and my chips, right? So I started doing a little bit of hustle and sell some stuff. And I never went to college. I never went to university, but I started over 150 different projects. You can call them companies in the world, and in 5 different countries. And at the moment, I'm in Dubai, where my family owns a recycling business, and I'm part of that. So 11 years ago, I took retirement from my business in the US, which is a telecom service. If you have heard of Google Voice, for example, so I created which empowers Google Voice. So before 21 years ago, I created this technology where we can have a number from anywhere in the world be used anywhere in the world over IP. So I grandfathered the technology, which basically empowers Google Voice, and Google Voice was part of my customer base. So we used to actually we created the service which allowed Google Voice to happen. And then I retired from that business around 11 years ago, and um, my business is in the U.S., but the U.S. didn't allow me to come to the U.S. for 11 years. I bought a house online. I made it a multi-million-dollar business sitting in Pakistan, and did all my banking and everything online, and hired people in Pakistan and elsewhere to grow that business. And this is 21 years ago. Back in the day, internet was not very strong, and I used to pay $70,000 per megabyte in Pakistan for bandwidth. And 2003 is when I started the first call center in Pakistan for a telecom company. Anyways, going forward, when I applied for U.S. visa 16 times, and I was rejected actually 16 times, but I applied probably more than that. And the last time when I was rejected was after I had an L1, which is a intercompany transfer to the US, that you have a company in another country and you need to really be in the country to go there. And so I filed for that. It costed me a lot of money. I spent over $50,000 in lawyer fees, and I got it approved in a week. But the embassy overseas in Dubai denied me after 2 years and 7 months of sitting in Dubai waiting for my visa to be stamped on my passport so I can go and do my job. When that happened, and then when this final rejection came, like 16 times, I decided that I'm going to now change my own country, make my passport worth something, which I don't need to be denied a visa on. I believe that one of the reasons Pakistanis are denied visas, and it's not just the US, I was denied 26 visas all over the world. And you, as a US citizen, you can just buy a ticket and go wherever you want. But as a Pakistani, even I came from a wealthy family, I couldn't just travel. Um, I remember one time I went with my mother after begging her to, because all her brothers and sisters live in Houston. So I kind of encouraged her to travel and meet them. And after 10 years of trying, she finally applied. But the person at the window who grants the visa denied her visa and gave me a visa. And she started crying, and we had $200,000 in our balance sheet, in our bank statement, and they said that you're faking the bank statement because it's just $100,000, which is showing in two different bank accounts, even though they were two different countries. So she started crying, and I returned my visa, even though I was rejected like 10 times, but I returned my visa. I said, I don't want to go if you can't grant the visa to my mother, right? So that kind of humiliation when you go through having everything financially capable, we've come, as I said, we come from a very well-off family, still being denied. United Nations Charter says that human beings are free to go wherever they go, wherever they want to go. It's not supposed to be a visa on the planet, but we still have these visas, and we can't just travel when we want to go. So I decided 11 years ago that I'm going to start teaching entrepreneurship to my people. And I started doing that. And I stopped doing my business, and I started 100 different small businesses that can be scaled 10,000 times each. Any business could be started with $100. I had a bet with someone. So the idea was that I'm going to help start a business which can be done 10,000 times. So imagine a Subway, which is like a lemonade stand, but it can be done in $100. Now remember, in Pakistan, the per person income per month is $50 a month, not $50 a day. So the scale is different, right? The income is very different. So I wanted to help them make at least $300 a month, and investing $100 a month, $100 one time. So I did that for 4 years, and I failed. I just couldn't figure out what I did wrong. And in that 4 years of process, I learned a lot of things. Why did I fail? I went to the drawing board back, and what did I do? So I went into kind of a depression, and I just started traveling. And I wanted to discover, what did I do wrong? And so I started traveling, and then I traveled to, 80 countries or something like that. And I just had this question from a very early start, that if a farmer in the US is earning, say, $1,000 an acre, why can't a farmer earn the same amount of money in Pakistan? Or in Holland, for example, they earn $2,000 an acre. Why can't they do the same in Pakistan? So I just had this question. I just couldn't understand why was this happening? And I thought I was not very well educated, so I just kept asking people, I understand what's happening. So that's kind of when I started leaving everything and just figuring out, why are we poor? Why, as a country, are we a poor country? What's wrong? People said, "Oh, it's education." So I started an online school. The goal was to teach 140 million people through a phone basic literacy. In Pakistan and in India, 65% of the country cannot read or write their name in any language. So if you can't even read your name, how would you read anything else, like the Bible or Quran or anything else? You can't just read it. You just don't know how to read it. Or how would you get out of your poverty? So I did that and I failed again. And I was like, nobody's taking advantage of this. Nobody wants to get educated. What's actually happening? So I bumped into this idea that the social media thing, I can teach through that. And if and so I started marketing myself, advertising different ideologies, different people. I did this experiment. I wanted to see, there's this study that if you have 5 friends who are millionaire, you would be the sixth one, right? You might have heard of it. So I wanted to apply the same formula on Facebook. I wanted to see if your 5 Facebook friends are millionaires, what happened to your mindset? I wanted to test it. I wanted to see, is this something which can be done over Facebook, or does it have to be a physical person? So I announced an experiment where anybody who would take my 500 Facebook friends, I would give them a free laptop. So now I have given 500 laptops. I have 500 case studies where I know that if they change their friends, their mindset starts to change. And then if my friends are more entrepreneurial, they're well off, they start to change. They just start to evolve. It's just like traveling. So just like I evolved when I was traveling, I saw people started to evolve around me. And that gave me a large following. Now I have around 1 million people on my Facebook. And a lot of people recognize me. And people started to ask me that you should come into politics. Now, for the last 11 years, I have also been teaching politicians how they can evolve, they can use technology to empower our people, but they just didn't, almost none of them listened. The amount of change they were having in their minds was very, very, very small, very, very meager. So last year I met a guy and he said that, you should start your own party. And um, I said, well, I don't even know 5 people who I can give a ticket to run for elections or Congress, as you call it. And we have 350 people in our parliament. I did not even know 5 people I can trust, or I know that they would not cheat people. They're not corrupt. They're not in it for themselves. So I thought of an idea that I've been teaching a lot of things to politicians, but why don't I start a new political party and then start teaching people what I wanted to teach, and hopefully other political parties can copy what I'm doing by like looking at me as a small threat or looking at me as a competition or a peer, so that they can copy what they're doing. So if, for example, there's a new hit pizza shop in San Francisco, all of a sudden Pizza Hut would get curious, what are they doing? What can we learn from them? Even though Pizza Hut is large, but they would be curious on what's happening. So that's always been my method for teaching others, not to teach, but to provoke questions. And when you provoke questions, people will think for themselves. I'm not the one telling them, they just have to ask them the question themselves. Uh, so I had courses, and I had other stuff already made for politicians. I had books. I've done 32 books already, and I just wanted to create kind of people who I want to see in power. And so I created a very thorough training, and it has to, you have to make a lot of Facebook friends who are not from your own country. You have to go on live. You have to do these interviews things and all kinds of weird stuff, which people are like, what kind of politics is this? And so basically, it's an evolution in politics. We created a system where we can have a shadow mayor in every single town of our country, which is 14,000 towns. So imagine if we have a shadow mayor, then the regular mayor is never available. We don't even know who they are normally. So a shadow mayor is marketed properly, put up a billboard. Hey, my name is Cynthia. I'm a shadow mayor of this town of San Francisco. If you have any problem, come to me. Instead of going to the mayor, they come to you, and you use power of networking, power of social media, power of YouTube, Facebook, to start highlighting a problem. And that way the problem starts getting solved. It may be not 100% of the problem can get solved, but 50 to 60% of the problem can get solved, because a lot of people are shy, they don't have the courage to speak, they don't have the network, they don't have the courage. So by having this system, we can have a parallel person who is like an NGO or not for profit, who is basically serving people for free, and being a liaison between the mayor, between the government, and between the citizens. So here you have all of a sudden a new middleware, as in technology, you say, between the people and the government, which is helping the government and the people at the same time. And we wanted to create the same thing in ministers. For example, in your country, you have secretaries. So, for example, you have Secretary of State, a Secretary of Transportation. We have a Minister of State, Minister of Transportation, Minister of Communication, blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to create 150 new ministers who would be passionate about their own problem, their own vertical, and then they would do a podcast with a person of expertise of that subject around the world. So after doing 400 interviews, they would, even if they were dumb, they would actually become smart, because they actually talked and know 400 people of their subject. So we are an agricultural country. We grow a lot of tomatoes, mangoes, rice, wheat. We don't need one minister of agriculture, we need 20. So I made minister of mango, minister of tomato, minister of rice, all kinds of ministers. And basically what they are is a subject expert who's trying to be available to the people and to the public and to the government on that subject. So Carla all of a sudden becomes Minister of English Literacy, because English is a global language. If we don't speak English, how would we communicate? How would we tell our sorrows, or how would we tell our problem to the world? So similarly, I took my friends who were interested in this and say, hey, would you like to become a minister? And this is how it's going to work. Basically, you have no power except the power of communication. You listen them out, you listen to their problems, and just see what we can do. And every 3 months, we do a conference so that all the people you network together, you bring in the secretaries, you bring in the staff, the government people, and the non-government people sit together online and just have a cup of coffee and just talk about the problem you have. That way, we might not solve the whole problem, but we would get closer in solving it. Because right now, nobody's doing anything about it. So all of a sudden, there's somebody doing something about it. And over the years, my hope is that we have 150 political parties in our country. So imagine if there are 150, imagine if we had 150 ministers, shadow mayors in a town. There wouldn't be any problems left for the real mayor to solve, because they're all solved, right? So that's kind of what this political party is. It's an experiment in politics, where we want to evolve the politics around the world, because same problems are everywhere. It's not just in Pakistan. Amount of homelessness in San Francisco made me start an organization called the Homeless American. It's just insane how many homeless people are in the US. It's just absurd that it's there. But I don't know a person who's doing something about it and is publicly available to talk about it with me. So, who's the minister or who's the secretary of homelessness in the United States, right? Who should I go to and who should I watch to understand what the problem is, how to solve it, what are the fundamental issues, who's the go-to person, right? Where's the helpline? Where do I call? So I want to create these people who leave a legacy behind. So you say Mother Teresa, right? So you know that Mother Teresa was taking care of the homeless. Who's the Mother Teresa of homeless people now? Who is taking care of them now? Nobody I know of. There's Greta Thunberg, who's like an ambassador for climate change. Right. So, and then that's how you asked why did I start it. So I'm sorry I took a longer time to explain it because you had to understand the context and why. And so I wanted to kind of give you an overview. Um, you know, Up till 33 years of age, I wanted to be the president. But then I found social media and I did not want it to be the president anymore because I knew that it's a lot of hard work to become a president or the prime minister and do all that. And even now, I would not want to be the president or the prime minister because you can't do much. Even if you are in that power, there's only 5 to 10% you can change. You get the glory, you get the brand, but you have met Obama multiple times. There's only so much he can do because the whole system is just like the way it is. So we need to just shake up the whole system where we can have normal people come in forward and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to take over the problem of the bees in the world. I'm going to take over the problem of the water in the world. I'm going to take over the problem of solar lighting in the world. I'm going to be the person who will help people make solar energy free in the planet. I'm going to be the person who will solve the water crisis on the planet. I'm going to be the person who will solve the toilet problem in the world." And we need not just one, we need like 200 ministers of this kind where people can do all this and they can all then collaborate together on a global scale. I think United Nations kind of does this, but it has become so bureaucratic and so systematic that we need to rethink the whole system, right? So education has changed, music has changed, film has changed, television has changed. Why hasn't politics changed yet? So here I am trying to change the way we do politics. It's like a new kind of introduction of technology in politics, basically. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and it decentralizes it and gives more power to the people. But there's actually one woman that has an organization called Built for Zero .org that is working on homelessness, and she is her name is Roseanne Haggerty, and she's done an amazing podcast with Malcolm Gladwell, the New York Times bestseller, called Homelessness is Solvable. It's excellent podcast, and she really is foot on the ground, work with the homeless to get them into homes, actually, not just making them comfortable in homelessness, but actually putting them in homes. So it sounds like you have real world solutions to problems that have been sticky for a long time in a lot of countries, and that you want to do real work on the ground. Maybe you'll run for political office one day, maybe not. Maybe you'll have some people in your party that will run for political office, but you're doing things before they get into office. I mean, that's how I think people should apply for the job, for apply to be a politician. What have you done that you can do even more of when you're put into that position of power? Thank you so much, Rehan.
You got it. That's exactly what it is. How do you know that you're not going to be? You can only talk. Why don't you start doing something? I mean, in the U.S., you have 100 plus parties also, and if people started to actually do the work, okay, I'm the president now. I'm the shadow president of the United States. From now on, I'm going to think for the 330 million people from today. This is my statement based on everyone, not just the blacks or the whites or the browns or the American Indians or the African Americans or the Pakistani Americans. Everybody should be included. And do the work. So instead of advertising and marketing yourself, oh, I will do this and that, let's start doing something, rather than waiting forever. And now we have the power to do it. This stuff is this amazing. I mean, social media is phenomenal. If you start a podcast, and then everything starts to change. So the difference between a lot of people, like for example, the lady you mentioned, and what I'm saying is that you need to be approachable by common people. You need to be famous for the work you're doing so that people can get inspired by you and follow the methodology which you are saying is available. So you need to be public. And a lot of politicians, one of the main reasons I started this is that all the politicians just don't understand technology. They don't want to understand technology. And that is, if you don't understand technology is in a stage where it's very dangerous for human beings. And instead of just saying, it's wrong, you need to explain, understand why is it wrong or why is it good. They just come out and give a statement. If I mean, the funniest comedy show on the planet was the United States Senate hearing with Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. It was insanely insane how what kind of questions these politicians were asking, and they need to leave their job if they don't understand. It's like not able to read and write and being a senator. If you can't use the internet properly today, if you don't understand how basic technology works, you're irrelevant in today's world. Impossible to think. Unfortunately, that's my very strong opinion because of what I've seen in the world. Everything is now connected to the internet. Everything is now connected to. I mean, Facebook has more power than the U.S. government. Has more information than the U.S. government. I can click one button and I don't need to do anything. In the US, I need to go to 10 offices to get a passport or do one thing done. Why isn't everything being connected? And it's just because they don't understand. They don't prioritize. It's not their priority. It's their priority to do other different things which were of their era. Today, if you don't know how to read and write, it's fine. But if you don't know how to use Google properly or try to understand how this stuff which we use every day works. Not that you have to be an engineer. I told you I'm a high school dropout. If I can invent things which I just told you, anybody can, and it's not like rocket science. It's just you have to be able to explain things easily, and most of the engineers don't explain it easily, and the leaders don't want to be called a fool, so they just say, oh yes, yes, we understand. We don't understand anything. So that's what provoked me to actually do this, because I have tried to work with these politicians in the US even, and in Pakistan and in other countries for many, many years. And I feel that it's just something beyond them. Maybe it's just that they just need to retire. It's about time they need to get their children or others to get in. They have a lot of wisdom, but it doesn't mean they understand things. And the new world requires a different kind of wisdom. We live in a very, very different world, and every 3 to 5 years, everything changes. I mean, just look at your phones, look at your WhatsApps and StreamYards and Facebooks. And 15 years ago there was no YouTube. So of course they don't get it, because it's not. And when you are in a very busy position, you don't have time to learn. You just don't.
Or desire to learn. That's a lot of the problem. And Roseanne Haggerty actually uses technology to solve homelessness because she collects information on the homeless and then connects them with the resources for them. So technology can be used in many, many ways. But the problem behind it is politics, as in human politics, not as in a certain party. But people, they're scarcity minded. They think, I've got my little kingdom. If I run a homeless shelter and all the homeless go away, I'm not going to have a homeless shelter anymore. And so whether it's by their conscious actions or not, they are keeping people in homelessness. And it's instead of solving the problem, they're perpetuating it. And I think that's what you're talking about. Many politicians in any country, in traditional political parties, are just perpetuating the problems rather than solving them.
I think they're doing their best based on what they know and based on the resources they grew up with. I remember I was sitting with the current Prime Minister of Pakistan once, and that was before he was the Prime Minister. And we had an hour-long meeting, and he just kept saying, I need to be in power in order to do anything. He just didn't understand how powerful crowdsourcing can be, how powerful attention can be. The new currency is attention. It's not money, right? If I can put my attention on anything in the world, it will start getting solved. Anything. It could be, and that's what basically I'm doing. I'm creating the attention creators, the leaders, so-called leaders, and then putting the attention on the problem from multiple aspects so that people start to listen and start to do something about the problem, not just thinking, oh, it's beyond me or something, this and that. So it's maybe I will fail, but I don't know anything better than to do with my time than what I'm doing. So unless something better shows up, this is what I'm doing.
Great. Great. I love that. And there's a principle in physics and it says the observer affects the observed. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You change things by looking at them. And how you're looking at them can actually change them even more. Like if a doctor looks at a patient that this is terminal, there's nothing you can do, you will die. Even if you had a cold, you could die from that cold by that doctor looking at you in that way. So these shadow ministers that really are passionate and compassionate and willing to make the effort to make the change to help the people that they serve can make a huge difference. It reminds me of the Minutemen back in the Revolutionary War times. That is the way that we were able to win the war because we cared. Picked up the pitchforks and were like, do or die. Give me liberty or give me death. And that's how America was founded. It has come a far afield from there. But that passion of the average person to make a difference really makes a difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for asking the question. And I realized today that I don't have enough content in English about the party, so I will go ahead and make a lot of videos on explaining the process. My insan basically means human, and we no longer are Americans or Pakistanis or this or that. We're all citizens of the internet world, living on Facebook and our phones and everything like that. So I hope that this idea goes far and wide and it starts happening in other places and it spreads. And I hope you would become the shadow minister for transportation in the United States, maybe, and you want to do something on that. So basically, it's a leader without a title, and just a title is there to just organize and bring attention that, oh, okay, what is that? So basically, it provokes questions, right? So thank you so much for asking these questions, and God bless you. It was lovely to hang out with you. I have an appointment which I have to rush to. Let's talk soon. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.